Well, hello and welcome to Continence Chat. We're excited to have you with us again today. This is where we are endeavoring to make uncomfortable conversations comfortable. And today we have a special guest with us, Michelle Morgan. She is the Vice President of Operations with Senior Helpers. And Michelle, we just want to welcome you. And I know you are over multiple locations. So if you could give us a little background on Senior Helpers and the areas that you cover, we'd be happy to hear and learn more.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much for having me today. So I have worked for Senior Helpers for 10 years. I actually started out as a caregiver with this organization, and I've managed caregivers in the field, and now I manage the operation for 2 locations in California, as well as assist management for 2 locations in Idaho. So between our locations, we have close to 250 clients that we service on a regular basis.
And Michelle, I'm going to jump in a little bit here because I'm going by memory, but you and I met probably a year and a half, 2 years ago at the Senior Helpers annual conference.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. It's interesting as we go into 2025. I know one of the things we're doing at our company is looking at different conferences of which ones make sense and which ones this year do we still go, the different pros and cons or whatever. But one of the things that I will tell you that I enjoyed about the Senior Helpers annual conference is you could literally see and feel the camaraderie between owners. You could see it. It was, and I don't say that about every conference or even every home care conference that we go to, but that one, you could see it. Being with them for 10 years, is it like a big reunion when you go every year?
Yeah, it's wonderful experience, and it's wonderful that Senior Helpers provides so many resources to us, in the field. So having, introducing us to products like Seni, that can help our care delivery, right, is amazing. And Senior Helpers really supports us, and they find those partnerships for us, which is great and just makes our job easier.
Yeah. Well, I think you're a good leader too, because I know when I went out there and we did the initial product training, you had multiple people with multiple roles. It was an all-in. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I honestly think when it comes to better continence care, it really has to be an all-in approach where not just the caregivers or not just the VP of operations, but different levels of management in between and different roles in between to understand kind of like truly takes a village to get the right product, the right size, the particular client of how they feel in a product. How have things been going? Because you with Senior Helpers, we have other Senior Helpers agency owners that have also implemented a continence care program, but you were one of the first to come on board, which we appreciate. How are things going?
I mean, it's going good. As you said, there is challenges sometimes getting people to even just want to try a different product. But that's one great thing that's great about, Seni is you guys provide us samples. We're able to actually take those to the clients and say, here, try this. And then, there's no cost for them involved where they have to buy a package and then it doesn't fit right and things like that, because, you never know, about when you're going to have, a need, right? And so it's not like most people have a caregiver there all the time. So finding the right product, is very important, that will help them to, address their incontinence issues when there's not a caregiver there to assist them. They don't have to worry about leakage and things like that could potentially be embarrassing, right? So yeah, I think that training the whole staff, right? Because everybody goes out in the field and they all talk to the clients and the caregivers. And so you never know where you might identify where you can have that conversation, right?
So for the sake of our viewers, Michelle, when you are having that conversation with the family, is your solution partly not just pointing them to Seni or a product, but you're also ordering the product for them? Is that correct?
Yeah. So we order the product for them. You know, we work with them and through the caregivers to identify, you know, what the need is, and, you know, maybe address, you know, if there's an additional product that's needed, like a guard or something like that, as well as the pull up. So, you know, in the beginning, we can really customize that for them, that solution. And also identifying other additional DME products that might be helpful too, you know, so not just the incontinence products, but also looking at, you know, could a urinal help, or, you know, maybe a, you know, a raised toilet seat, you know, things like that in the home.
Yeah. I just recently saw a raised toilet seat, and I'm not kidding. I think those should go in every home. I don't think it just should be for people that have difficulty. I'm going to just share something. I do a lot of traveling, and I've noticed, I'd be curious if others have noticed, at the airports, those toilet seats seem to get lower and lower and lower. And as I get a little bit older and older and older, I'm seeing a gap here. But I honestly think those, my mom recently went into independent living, and I used her bathroom recently, and it had just about a foot of a raise on it. I said, oh, this is easy peasy type of thing. But I honestly think those types of things make a difference in people aging in place longer at home. And the fact that you not only offer those solutions, but you actually implement them yourselves as far as doing the order, that takes a lot off the plate. Because I'd love to know, like, a little bit about your 250 clients. Do you find a lot of, I'm envisioning in my mind, older adult spouses where one spouse is taking care of the other spouse, and it could be, it doesn't really matter too much, but it could be a petite woman that's taking care of her bigger spouse, husband, and those little things become the big things that allow that person to have their loved one at home. Those couple of differences that you're doing. Do you see that a lot, or do you see it's more adult children, or does it just go the gamut, people living alone, aging older, or what does that demographic look like?
I mean, it's various, right? It may be a spouse, it could be a child who is providing that additional care. And a lot of times, you know, we're coming in and we're, you know, because a lot of people can't afford 24-hour care. You know, our services are not covered by Medicare, you know, widely. It's just new that some Medicare Advantage plans are starting to cover. So, you know, this can be a very big expense for somebody. So helping them to find other resources then takes that, you know, that the community is the only option for them, right, off the table. Now they can stay there in their own home. You know, it's proven that people actually have a better quality of life if they are in their own environment. And so that's our goal. And I find that, you know, there's two things that are very difficult for the families. One of them being, you know, behaviors due to cognitive decline, you know, and Alzheimer's and dementia. And then also in, you know, dealing with incontinence. I mean, that's a hard thing, right? It's not the same as taking care of, you know, a baby or an infant, right? You know, I mean, I have personal experience being a family caregiver, and actually incontinence was the thing that actually became the most difficult for me to care for, because she was larger than me, and as she became weaker and less able to maneuver herself, it became more on me. And you know, my husband, he was not comfortable being in the room to assist me, right? So it actually led me to having to find another solution for her. We had used 𝗵𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀 for her to help. But that became where Medicare would no longer pay for that either. And that's a very, very expensive solution. So, you know, the Seni products are much better than what I've seen on the market. And it would have actually saved me a bit of work and not had to have changed her as often, right? Because she would have been protected and dry, you know, longer, you know, not having the leakage and having to change all the bed sheets because, right, of that issue. So.
Yeah.
How willing are people to speak about this when you're going into the home or you're over the caregivers that are going into the home? Is this a discussion they don't want to talk about?
You know, it's funny. I think that it's harder for the person who's asking the questions than it is for the person answering. You know, I feel that most seniors, if they are incontinent, they've accepted that they're incontinent. But I think it's hard for family members to ask those questions. You know, I went and did an assessment once, and the client was, you know, living with her children in their home, and I, you know, had her take me around the house and show me her bathroom routine, and you know, I found she had a broken arm, and I asked her, how are you getting off of the toilet right now? How are you cleaning yourself? You know, and I was able to go back to the family and give them a lot of insight that they had no idea. So, you know, so not only do they not even know to ask those questions, right, but then hard to have that conversation. And I think a senior is maybe would feel a little bit more comfortable talking to somebody outside of the family as well, you know, so being that go-between, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you had mentioned, Michelle, when you talk about caregivers, that you started off with senior helpers as a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you ever imagine, was your vision to move up into a management role? Or I'm just curious, people have passion of why they, you know, start things, but what led you, because there's lots of home care agencies out there, right? So what led you to senior helpers? And I'm just curious to dig in a little bit about your background as a caregiver and what that road looks like, because we hear a lot these days about staffing crisis, caregivers in general, and the path, you know, forward. But I would think if there are caregivers out there that may be watching this episode, what a path. I mean, what a story to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had been going to college. I was actually studying kinesiology, but I took a lot of units in geriatrics because I just always enjoyed that. And, you know, previous to me going back to school, I had been a cosmetologist for many years, and I worked for hospice as a massage therapist. And so that's kind of what had led me back to school and started my path in geriatrics. I also grew up, you know, my grandparents lived next door to me, and my grandfather was a double amputee. And I had a great aunt who I helped provide care for when I was a teenager. She was schizophrenic and had dementia, as well as extreme osteoporosis. And that's where I got my introduction to incontinence care. And so while I was going to college, I started working as a caregiver, and somebody had told me about that field, and I started part-time. Within probably 6 months, I got the opportunity to come in and work in the office. I started out as in scheduling, and then I became the recruiter and caregiver manager. And then, you know, I quit going to school, and this felt like where I needed to be, you know. So I even when I was a cosmetologist, I tended to have an older population of clients. So
Wow. I can see why your team enjoys working with you, even from that day that I was there to even just seeing your face light up. But I feel like you've been there, done that, which makes it easy to for a caregiver to develop trust, right? Of they've been in that role or whatever. So I think that's pretty cool. Pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. And we try to promote a lot from within, when we have those opportunities. We actually have, our community relations person / marketer. She was a caregiver with our agency. We have a caregiver manager who was started as a caregiver, and we just promoted another caregiver into an administration role in one of our offices. So, absolutely, there's opportunity to evolve.
What
awesome.
Areas in California do you cover? If families are looking for home care agency, what areas are you covering?
So we cover most of the Bay Area. We have 2 locations. One's in Danville, and it's servicing areas in the East Bay. I would say like from Pleasanton all the way to, Oakland, Alameda area, Fremont, and then we have an office in Redwood City that services from San Francisco all the way to Sunnyvale, the entire peninsula area there. As well as we have wonderful offices, surrounding us who also, can provide services through senior helpers outside of our service area. So.
And what tips would you give to a family, Michelle?
Just ask questions. Don't be afraid to have those conversations, because, it's more important to find solutions before, accidents occur. One of the things I always say is, the bathroom can be the most dangerous place in the home. Everything is slick and hard. So, it's so just, identify those issues ahead of time, and don't be afraid to have those conversations, so that you can avoid a lot of problems down the line if you just start early. So.
Good stuff. What are a couple of things you're looking forward to in 2025?
We're actually implementing a lot more training for our caregivers in 2025. So we have a wonderful Alzheimer's and dementia program that we sponsor, that 𝗬𝗵𝗘 made for us, and it's just amazing. And so we're going to be starting training in Parkinson's care, and also in adding more personal care skills for our caregivers. So.
Yeah. I love that about the Parkinson's training. That's super important. I know there are a lot of people out there who are advocates for finding a cure for that and making a difference. So we'll have to connect you with some folks behind the scenes, but that's awesome.
Okay, great.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for being our guest. We do appreciate it, and we value the relationship. We really appreciate it, and I hope to get out there this year, and I know Susie does too. So,
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Awesome.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Michelle.